Hey you, today we're going to be talking about how to start an emergency fund, and this is definitely a tip that you want to take so you never go broke. Welcome to Healthy, Wealthy, Skinny, where we focus on the steps to help you live a healthy, wealthy, and skinny life. I'm Sean, so let's get into our topic for today, and that is an emergency fund. What is it? How do you get one? Where do you keep it? We're going to cover all of those things in today's video, so let's get to it. Let's start off with what is an emergency fund. An emergency fund is money that you've saved and put aside to pay for large unexpected expenses. The goal of having an emergency fund is to have money set aside to cover expenses that you might incur in an emergency situation. Some examples of emergency situations might be you losing your job, you experiencing an issue with your car where it needs to be repaired. You might experience a situation where you need to repair something in your home. Maybe it's your HVAC system or your washer or dryer or your dishwasher. You also might have other family emergencies. Someone in your family might get sick. God forbid, you might have a death in the family. These are all emergencies that would incur large costs, and if you have money set aside, you will be better to cope with those situations. No one wants to think about emergencies like these happening, but they do happen, and it's better if you're prepared for them financially, just in case they do happen. Now, let's talk about the difference between you having just a regular savings and having an emergency fund. You might have a savings for something that you are trying to save for, like a car or a house or a vacation or anything, but your emergency fund should be totally separate. It should be money that is put aside just in case something happens. So it should be totally separate from any of your other savings goals. A good best practice is to have both a regular savings and an emergency fund. That way, if something happens, you don't derail your new car that you're trying to save for or the trip that you're trying to save for. You have money specifically set aside for emergencies. Think about it. You wouldn't want one bad incident to erase all of the hard work that you've been doing in saving for your other goals. An emergency fund is exactly what you want to have to protect you from this type of situation. At this point, the benefits of having an emergency fund should be really clear. It ensures that you're able to cover the expenses of an emergency without damaging yourself financially. Without an emergency fund, you're more likely to max out any credit cards you have or take out very high interest loans, and these things are very detrimental to your financial health. Another very common question about emergency funds is how much money should you have in your emergency fund? Well, it's recommended that you start off with $1,000, but you don't want to stop there. That's just your initial emergency fund. A good rule of thumb is to have at least 3 to 6 months of your fixed expenses saved aside in your emergency fund. This ensures that, let's say in case of a job loss, you're able to take care of yourself for at least 3 to 6 months if you've had that much saved up. Some experts also recommend having a full year set aside for your fixed expenses. And by fixed expenses, I mean those things that you have to pay no matter what. Your rent, your mortgage, utilities, things of that nature. Things like clothing and entertainment expenses, you don't have to include those because you can easily stop those if something happens to you financially. But you want to make sure that you can take care of your basic living expenses. When it comes to calculating how much you need in your emergency fund, look at your fixed expenses and determine how much money you'll need to survive in a 3 to 6 month period. But again, you can start off getting that $1,000 emergency fund and then do that calculation for 3 to 6 months. And then if I were you, I would take it up a notch and plan for a full year. Now, if you have no idea what your fixed living expenses are for a full month, this is where you need to stop and create your budget. I'll leave a link in the description to a very easy budget that you can create. I even have printables that you can use or an Excel spreadsheet that you can use to keep track of your budget. But this is a step that you need to take because you need to know how much money it takes for you to live so you know how much money you need to save in your emergency fund. Let's move on to how you start your emergency fund. And we're going to break this up into you making 3 main decisions. First, you'll need to decide where you're going to save your money. Secondly, you need to decide how much money you're going to save. And thirdly, how you'll get the money that you need to add to your savings. So how will you actually build your emergency fund? Let's dive into decision number 1. Where will you keep your money? This is totally up to you, but let's talk about a few best practices. First off, let's talk about savings accounts. And this will be the most obvious place for you to save your money, in a bank, in a savings account. If you choose to go this route, let me just say, make sure you save your money separate from your checking account. It should actually be in a savings account. And 2, it should be in a savings account that is separate from your regular savings. Your emergency fund is not the same as money that you're saving for other reasons, so you want to keep these 2 sets of money in separate locations. For me, I like keeping them in a separate bank. Out of sight, out of mind, for me, is best for my emergency fund. It is not with my regular money, my regular checking. It's a separate bank. I don't have a debit card for it. I keep it totally out of sight, out of mind, and I automatically send a set amount over to that account every month just to keep it where it needs to be. I would like to suggest that you use a high-yield online savings account. These savings accounts have higher interest rates than what you might get at your regular bank, so your money can work for you while you're saving it. I'll leave a link in the description to a blog post that I have on my Feminine Financial blog, where you can go in and learn all about these high-yield savings accounts and find the one that's great for you. Some other options for where you might want to keep your emergency fund might be a separate checking account, a CD, you could use a money market account, or any other place that you can store your money safely and securely for a rainy day. Your next decision is how much money you're going to save in your emergency fund. First off, you want to get started saving right away and try to reach a $1,000 savings goal. That should be your initial goal, even if you don't already know what your monthly fixed expenses are. First off, try to reach that $1,000 savings goal. Next up, you need to understand your finances. You need to know what your monthly fixed expenses are so you can determine what that value would be for a 3 to 6 month range. And then finally, my suggestion is after you've reached that 3 to 6 month range, try to take it up a notch, like I said earlier, and go for a full year. This will ensure that you have an ample amount of money saved just in case something happens like you losing your job. And your third decision is to figure out how you're going to get the funds that you're going to save to build your emergency fund. And I have a few tips on how you can save that initial $1,000 and then take that up to that 3 to 6 month goal, and then finally that 12-month goal. My first tip to funding your emergency fund is to get a side hustle. And this is something that you can do to bring in an extra income that's separate from what you bring in from your regular job. So this might be starting a side business or any type of activity that you can do to bring in extra money. My next tip is to live frugally. And this doesn't mean going without. This means being smart with how you spend your money. And I have another great post that will talk about 50 ways that you can live frugally and save money. I'll leave that link in the description as well. Living frugally and spending your money wisely will go a long way towards helping you have the money that you need to build your emergency fund. My next tip to building your emergency fund quickly is to sell your stuff. If you have things that you no longer want or use, you can sell those items and make a little extra money. You can sell them on the Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, Let Go, Poshmark. There are tons of sites that you can use to sell your unwanted items. If you're like me, you have tons of shoes that you don't wear anymore, you could sell those. You might have electronics or video games or things of that nature that you don't use anymore. Sell these items and you can build extra money fast, and you can put all of that money aside in your emergency fund. You'll have your emergency fund built in this way before you know it. My next tip to building your emergency fund is going to sound pretty basic, but you can save your spare change. You'll be surprised at how much money you can save by taking your spare change out of your pocket or your purse every night, or even your car, placing it into a container and saving that money. Very basic, very simple, but also very effective. There's also a cool app that you can use that will help you save your spare change off of your debit card purchases. I'll leave a link to that app in the description. You are now equipped with everything you need to know to get that emergency fund built. You know what it is, you know why you need it, and you can start thinking about where you want to keep your money, how much money you want to keep, and how you're going to build that emergency fund fast. So now it's time to get started with that saving and building that emergency fund. My recommendation for next steps is to go ahead and get you one of those high interest online savings accounts, and then next week's video is going to be all about creating a budget. I'm going to tell you all about the 50-30-20 budget, how easy it is, and how it's going to help you manage your finances super easy. So if you haven't done so, make sure you like and subscribe to this channel so you'll know when my video drops next week. But it is not time to leave. I want you to do me a favor and check out this video right here. It talks all about saving money when you're broke, and it's going to help you with some tips on building your emergency fund. And then I want you to check out this video right here because it was chosen especially for you. Have fun watching these videos, and I'll see you next week. Bye.